much. And so it's not a unanimously approved item. Same with, we have two, you can kind of see the airport in the top right corner of that picture, where we have intersecting runways at a 90-degree angle. One of the other procedures is to look at increased use of the crosswind runway. Well, if you live off of runway 523, you think that's a great idea. If you live off of 1432, not so much. And so we do have pretty much universal acceptance on raising the 2,000-foot hold, OPDs, increasing the glide slope. Those are pretty much accepted by everyone, but some of the other procedures are slightly more controversial. One of the other recommendations that came out is to do an airport exploratory study and to look at the feasibility of relocating the airport, which is a bit of a misnomer, right? You're not relocating the airport. You're closing this airport and building a new airport. There's nothing we're going to pick up and move. But this was one of the things that came out of the Part 150, and it's kind of spawned by a number of factors. One, the Part 150, obviously. Long-term growth of Collier County. When this airport was built in 1943, Collier County had I think it's 3,000 people in the county. We have 450,000 people in the county now. Our growth projections put it somewhere around 1 million people when it's done. And so that's a factor. Constraints of the existing airport property. We are a GA-only airport. We don't have commercial service, and that's predominantly because of our weight limit. We have a 75,000-pound weight limit, which is a factor of our runways. They're asphalt. Their longest one is 6,500 feet long. And if you saw that picture, because of the development all around us, there is no chance to extend those runways. We'd have to build a bridge over the river or over one of the roads, and that's probably not likely to happen. And resiliency. So our western border of the airport is the Gordon River, which goes to the Gulf of Mexico. 2 years ago, we were hit by Hurricane Ian. We had 4 feet of water covering the entire airport, and that's really a factor of being that close to the Gulf. We're less than a mile from the Gulf of Mexico, and when you have big storm events like that, and thankfully that's pretty rare, but it does happen, and so relocation is a consideration when you talk about things like that. We have looked at this a number of times. It's been preliminarily studied, everything from the 70s through the mid-2000s. This will be the most recent one, but we believe this will be the most comprehensive look at it. So primary study elements, we're going to look at the long-term land use and growth of the county. What are the requirements for a new airport? Other key factors, and primarily is related to environmental concerns. A lot of people, it's easy to look at a map of Collier County and go, oh, take your pick. There's tons of space out there. And most people don't realize 80% of our county is in permanent conservation, either state or federal parks. And so while that looks like a big empty open space that would be perfect for an airport, it's also perfect for Florida panthers and all kinds of wading birds and key deer and things like that. So, and I'll show you that here. You can see everything you see up there in blue, aqua, striped, anything like that is in conservation. Everything that's red or pink is either current or planned development. And so you can see there's not a lot of great options there. You see that one kind of hole in the middle, sort of where APF is us. So off to the right, that seems like that could potentially be a good spot. But what you don't see is that green blob to the bottom left of it is our landfill. And so you can't put an airport right next to a landfill. And so it is a challenge. There are potentially some opportunities, and we're doing this, but as you can see, it's not exactly like there's millions of square feet or millions of acres of land available for us. We've done an analysis too, our consultant that's working on this, and we believe that from start now to potentially when we would relocate it, it would be somewhere in that 15 to 20 years from when we said, okay, we're gonna go forward with it. So it's also not an overly quick process. UL 94, so unleaded avgas. I know the supervisor from Santa Clara talked about it. We've taken a different approach. We still offer 100 low lead. It's still an option at the airport. But beginning in June, we began offering UL 94 as an option as well. We know, though, that UL 94 is considerably more expensive, and primarily for us it was because of shipping costs. There's only one manufacturer of it that we get it from is Swift Fuels. It comes from Indiana. We are a long way from Indiana. We didn't know exactly how much we would even be able to sell. So originally we were ordering it in small 350-gallon totes and having that trucked down. It's the least efficient way you can do it, also the most expensive way. We bought our own fuel truck there, so you can see that's a 2,500-gallon fuel truck that we use just for UL 94. We repurposed our only avgas tank in our fuel farm to be UL 94. So the only place we store avgas now is in our self-fuelers. And we put in a bunch of training and protocols in place to prevent any type of misfuelings, because as she mentioned earlier, not all aircraft are currently able to take UL 94. But where it really kind of hits home with those that use it is we knew the cost was going to be high. And so what our board did is they decided that we wanted to make the commitment to the community to incentivize UL 94. And so when we first started getting it, just ballpark, right? So we sell it for about $6 a gallon. It was costing us $11.65 a gallon to buy it from Swift Fuels. And our board said, hey, it's important enough to us, we're gonna pay the difference. And so we kind of joke that no one works as hard as we do to lose money. And we pay the difference. So at that $5.65 a gallon, we were just eating that loss every gallon that went into a plane. Luckily, because of that, demand was higher. And we've been able to order more and more. And as you order full loads, that shipping cost comes down tremendously. And so now we still lose, but we're only losing about $1.70 a gallon on it. In addition to that, we have basically you can see those next two bullets, about $250 that we offer to get the STC. So the cost of getting the $100 that it costs to get it from Swift Fuels, and then $150 for the A&P mechanic inspection to make sure, because that was, for us, that's more of a safety thing than anything else. We want to make sure that if you say you want this, that you can take it. And so we also want to make sure that cost, there would be no excuse, right? Oh, well, I can't do it, it's too much, even though I have a plane, I can't spend $250. So we'll pay the $250 cost for you to get that STC, get that sticker on your wing, so that we know that it's safe to do it. And so you can see there, our board budgeted about $182,000 for this. And currently, as of last month, it's about, we've replaced about 20% of our avgas sales with UL 94. And it's pretty much a straight swap if you look at our fuel numbers. It's not as if we've chased some avgas users away and we've got a whole new group of these people. You can just, it's almost identical, the amount that one has come up and the other one's gone down. And I'm almost at the end here. Lastly, we have created a new program. We have a lot of, we'll say not sticks, but we have a lot of things where we publicize the less courteous operators, those who fly during the curfew, those who fly most frequently during the curfew, and do some of the other things. And what we wanted to do was come up with another way. We still have those in place, but we want to have a carrot too. And so we've created this, we call it our Fly Safe, Fly Quiet leaderboard, and it's a program that we have that evaluates operators on either 2 or 3 categories, depending on if you're a jet or a non-jet. Arrival altitude, so you can see we've made those kind of concentric circles around the airport. Those are based on the 3-degree glide slope for the runways. Compliance with our voluntary curfew, which is 10 to 7. And if you're a jet, your jet noise stage. And they're divided, so jets, turbos, and pistons each compete on their own. And the goal is to publicize the best. So we pick the winners, we publicize, we grade you like school, A, B, C, D, F, and we publicize only the winners, only the A operators, because the goal is not to we do other things to kind of talk about those who were not so much, but this one we wanted to be a positive. And so as it stands right now, this is kind of an example metric there, but we publicize those, we do it quarterly. There is a minimum, you have to fly 25 operations into the airport. Our goal ultimately is hopefully to add some further, more tangible incentives into this program as we go forward. Right now, it's really a publicity-based thing. So we're giving that publicity, that public acknowledgement of their efforts in terms of those kind of things. And so this is what we're doing here. But ultimately, if I can get our attorney, who will be our keynote speaker tomorrow, so you can ask him about it, to say that we can do some more tangible, sort of meaningful recognition for our winners especially, then we think we can be even more effective at promoting those things that we know cause noise. Flying in too low, which is a safety thing too, right? If we want you on that 3-degree glide slope, we don't want you below it. Flying at night and flying the quietest aircraft that you can. And so With that, those are just some of the things, sampling of the things that we've undertaken at the airport, and we're pretty happy and proud with what we've been able to accomplish. But you know, we know, like she mentioned this morning, we haven't solved all the problems. There's going to be other things. I've heard other great suggestions from other speakers, and I'm sure I will for the next day or so as well. So we're always looking for new ways, but we're you know, excited about some of the steps we've taken so far. So I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much, Zach. Our next presenters are going to be virtual, and we have two presenters for this part. It is Adeel, Yousuf, and Jacob Attwood. Adeel Yousuf is the Noise Office Manager for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. He oversees noise programs at JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, Teterboro, and New York Stewart International Airports. It's one of the largest and most complex airport systems in the country. Adeel started working for the Port Authority in 2009 in the Environmental and Noise Department. Over the years, his career evolved and taking over the position as Noise Officer Manager in 2015. Adeel has been involved in the formation of the Noise Office with many new noise initiatives, including Part 150 studies for 4 Port Authority airports, formation of community roundtables, overseeing community engagement, deploying various technology and data collection systems, data analysis and reporting, and most recently, the development and the rollout of Fly Quiet programs. Jointly presenting with him is Jacob Attwood. He is an aviation noise program manager with the Port Authority. He has worked there since 2017, where he's had the opportunity to participate in a variety of projects, including the Part 150 and the Port Authority's new Fly Quiet program. So please help me welcome Adeel and Jacob.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me fine. Perfect. Okay, great. All right, so let me get started with the presentation here. So before we start talking about the Fly Quiet program for Port Authority airports, I just wanted to give you an overview of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, because I'm sure some people are not familiar with the agency and the region. So as the name suggests, Port Authority is a bi-state agency between New York and New Jersey. The Port Authority operates various transportation facilities between New York and New Jersey, including airports, maritime port, tunnels and bridges, and subway train system. So it's a very large agency, 8,000 plus employees. We have annual budget of $9 billion plus. So on the screen, you're seeing the Port Authority airports that we operate, 5 of them. So we have John F. Kennedy International, Newark Liberty International, LaGuardia, and Teterboro airports. As you can see, these airports, they are very close to each other with an 18-mile radius. So it's a very busy operation, very complex airspace. And we also have Stewart Airport up north. It's a small airport compared to the big ones. Between these 5 airports, last year in 2023, we had 1.23 million aircraft movements or operations, and 144.2 million passengers system-wide, which was a record for us. So for the next slides, I have a quick overview of each airport. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. So JFK has 4 runways, as you can see on the screen on the right. 450,000 operations last year, 62.5 million passengers, and 1.6 million tons of cargo. LaGuardia has 2 runways, 350,000 operations last year, and 32.4 million passengers. And Newark has 3 runways, 400,000 plus operations last year, 49.1 million passengers, and 690,000 tons of cargo at Newark Airport. Last but not least, Teterboro has 2 runways, 170,000 operations last year. It's a GA airport, meaning there are no airlines and passengers at this airport. They do have an existing Fly Quiet program, which has been here for several years. Also wanted to show you the airspace, how busy it is. So on your screen, you're seeing the flight tracks for our airports. Each color represents a type of operation, arrival or departure. And as you can see, on the screen, you're seeing 4,200 operations in 24-hour period. So That's a very busy and complex airspace between, the major 4 airports. They are very close to each other. Typically, FAA TRACON, they handle 4,800 plus operations in a given day. So it's pretty phenomenal, the job they do. Also, LaGuardia, JFK, they have slot management, meaning the slot controls for hourly operations limit to manage congestion and delays at in the airspace. On the right, just want to show you guys the surface area of our airports. Just as a comparison, there's Denver Airport at the bottom. Nothing against Denver. Just wanted to show you how small our airports are, and they can fit, serve a couple of times at least inside the footprint of Denver Airport. So it's pretty amazing the number of operations they can generate, in a given year, or in such a small surface area. So moving along here, now we'll talk about the Fly Quiet program. So some of you may be aware, Port Authority went through a long Part 150s for all 4 airports. We got the record of approvals from FAA last year, 2023. All 4 airports, they had a Fly Quiet program as a recommended program management measure. And the reason for that was twofold. The first one was to track and report on the NCP implemented noise abatement measures. So we want to make sure whatever is implemented, we can keep track of it and report to public to make it meaningful for the communities. And secondly, there were a lot of suggestions and recommendations came in from the public, which did not make the cut under the Part 150, meaning we weren't able to show any benefit inside 65 DNL contour, which is a requirement for Part 150s. So we made a separate list of all those measures, and a decision was made that these would be explored and evaluated as part of the Fly Quiet program. So in 2022, before we got the record of approvals, Port Authority went through a procurement process, and we hired BridgeNet as our consultant and contractor to start working on these programs in summer of 2022. So the contract called for establishing new programs at JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark airports, and evaluating and enhancing the Teterboro existing Fly Quiet program. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Jacob Attwood. He was introduced, he's a program manager in the noise office, and he's been heavily involved in this project. Go ahead, Jacob.
Thank you, everyone, for giving us this opportunity to speak here today. So start off, we just want to go over what a Fly Quiet program is. So Fly Quiet program is a voluntary collaboration between the Airport Authority, the airlines, aircraft operators, and the FAA's air traffic controllers to encourage them to use quieter aircraft, noise abatement flight procedures, and preferential runway uses. Most of these Fly Quiet programs focus on 3 main areas: an awareness campaign with the goal of making all stakeholders, including the airlines, communities, and FAA, aware of the noise issues, data reporting and transparency with the data, and in the long run, having the ultimate goal of benefiting the communities and ultimately reducing the noise impact of the communities. You can go to the next page, Adeel. So here we're going to talk a little bit about the benchmarking that we did for designing our Fly Quiet program. So we started our benchmarking in 2022, where we surveyed and interviewed a variety of airports across the United States who have Fly Quiet programs to learn their best practices. We interviewed a large amount of airports, including the San Francisco Airport, the John Wayne Airport, Philadelphia Airport, and more. We also established a Fly Quiet focus group in 2022 involving airlines, aircraft operators, and the FAA to work together to collaborate and develop a Fly Quiet program that worked for everyone. Now you can go to the next page. So what we identified in our research and our benchmarking was there's a couple things that existed within most Fly Quiet programs. The first being ranking airlines based off their fleet mix. So most Fly Quiet programs had some element where they would rank the aircraft, how noisy aircrafts were in an airline's fleet. We also saw that it was a pretty common in Fly Quiet programs to have a preferential runway use as part of theirs. And for us, particularly late night hour operations were something that was considered in our Part 150 study. And we also saw it was very common in many Fly Quiet programs not to propose new flight procedures, but instead to track and encourage better usage of existing procedures. I can go to the next page. So this is a quick timeline of the focus group meetings that we had with our focus group. So the first meeting was in October of 2022, where we wanted to work with them, introduce the Fly Quiet program and generate ideas. We had a second meeting in February of 2023, where we reviewed and refined our ideas for the flag quiet program. Our third meeting was in May and June of 2023, where we developed a draft scoring sheet and developed a draft flag quiet program, which were then finalized in our fourth meeting in September of 2023, where we presented the final flag quiet scoring elements and presented this to the airlines. And our final most recent meeting was in February of 2024, where we presented the final flag quiet program for 2022 and began discussing the flag quiet program for 2023. Throughout the entirety of this process in 2023 and 2024, we had briefings for our community roundtables to keep them involved in the process. And you can go to the next page. So our flag quiet program has three main components to it. There's a technical component, which is data collection, creating a software and dashboard for airlines to review the data, and then tracking and reporting the data, the flight procedures, and the airlines reviewing of the data. There's a stakeholder engagement, making sure that we get the buy-in and opinions of the airlines and operators, the airport itself, and the FAA, and using this buy-in and participation to improve the program. And public outreach, we were creating annual reports for the flag quiet program. We created a new webpage on our website for the flag quiet program and frequently briefed the community roundtables in the flag quiet program to make sure that the public was aware of what's going on and they were part of the process. I can go to the next page. So our scoring system was broken up into two halves, a airline fleet noise quality half and engagement half. Each one of these halves was worth about 50 points, and we put these together to rank the airlines that participated in this program. Airlines that performed the best, which gathered more than 85 points, would be put into our highest tier or gold tier. Airlines that performed received between 70 and 85 points were put into our silver tier, and all other airlines were still looked at, but wouldn't be ranked on our sheet as they would score outside the two top tiers. I can go to the next page. So here's a little bit more detail of how our scoring system works. So the first 50 points were done using a weighted average on airlines operations and the certified noise level, noise stage for each aircraft they operated. The second half was from engagement points. This made up of three main areas: participation. This was participation in our annual focus groups and annual flag quiet virtual meetings, and participation in the community roundtables. Then there was accessing our flag quiet dashboard so they could see things throughout the year and improve their performance. And lastly was providing us with information on how they were improving their operations, including educational training materials for the pilots for the flag quiet program, information on reducing noise through means such as vortex generators, and lastly, providing information on how they were operating sustainability or offsetting their carbon emissions. The other aspect that we wanted to add to our flag quiet program was an airport-wide statistics for annual flag quiet report. So this is something that the airlines were not scored upon, but instead gave a greater overview of the airport. So it included an airport-wide fleet mix by noise stage, airport-wide runway use during late hours, and airport-wide flight procedure usage. This gave good information on the airport and also recognized the FAA's participation and the role in the runway selection and flight procedures. The 2022 flight quiet report was broken up for each airport, including JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark, and was based off the 2022 calendar year. This was released in February, and we've begun working on our 2023 flight quiet reports, which we're looking to have released in April this year, and future reports are expected to be released in April each of the following years. So up next, we just have some pictures of the flight quiet reports that we put out. So here you can see the different tiers that we released and the airlines and the different categories that we had. So we had domestic major air carriers, international air carriers, regional air carriers, and cargo airlines. I can go to the next page. And this is just a preview of the scoring sheet and the explanation of the scoring that we had in our flag quiet program. And you can go to the next page. And this is a preview of the airport statistics and procedure use pages that we had. And then I'll hand it back to you, Adeel.
Thank you, Jacob. So I'll just wrap this up quickly. So just to take a step back, so when we got this task of start developing these fly-quiet programs, to be honest, it was a very challenging and daunting task. Something we're doing first time for large hub airports simultaneously for big three airports, and yeah, it was something we've never done before. So I guess before we starting the program, we took a step back and we came up with a good plan and strategy, which I believe really worked well for us. And I'm pleased with the outcome of the project. So I've listed some of the strategy points here that really helped us. So the first one is benchmarking. Benchmarking really gave us a good understanding of what are the industry best practices and helped us lay a solid foundation for our program. So that was really helpful. For any project to be successful, you have to have good program objectives and goals and clear project schedule and timeline. So that was something that was done way ahead of even going through the procurement. So we had the entire plan ready, and it was right from the scope of work to contract award and to all the meetings. We made sure all the parties were on board with the objectives, goals, and the schedule and the timeline. Frequent communications and collaboration with stakeholders, that was one of the keys of this project. So we had several meetings with the airlines and the FAA combined, and also, as Jacob mentioned, the whole focus group was set up. We did meet with the FAA separately and also with airlines separately, just to make sure, hear them out, hear their concerns, and work with them very closely. So that was another key in the whole process. And also, we did briefings to the roundtables to keep them apprised of the project outline and what's expected coming out of this project. We were very transparent with the data right from the beginning. We were clear where the data is coming from our ANES system, what's the QA/QC process behind the data gathering and the monthly reporting and so forth. And BridgeNet also developed a very robust type of dashboard for airlines to log in and review data, which was really helpful for the whole process for airlines to give them good understanding and comfort with the data, and we gained their trust in the whole process. Managing expectations, so that was done right in the beginning of the project. When we met with the stakeholders, we explained, what are the roles and responsibilities for each type of party involved in this, also the roundtables, and also what's the outcome going to be for each party involved. So that was done early on. Buy-in from airlines was instrumental for the successful rollout of the program. So we made sure that airlines were on board with our approach. We had draft suggestions and program elements and discussed with them, and we went back and made tweaks and came back with something which allowed us to gain consensus with the airlines. We also wanted to make the program meaningful for all the stakeholders. So there's something for everyone, I believe, in this program, such as recognition for airlines for good performance. That's the bread and butter of this program. And then data transparency from communities and FAA standpoint, and then overall awareness of noise concerns for all stakeholders involved, including the communities and the roundtables. All meetings were virtual. That really helped us out for all the stakeholders to meet often and with ease, with added flexibility, especially for the airline folks who have busy schedule due to their travel. And then I'll just end with another remark is that this is a big step for Port Authority airports. This is a brand new program, so we never had anything like this. And I think even on the Northeast corridor, no other big airport has a program like this system-wide. So very proud of it, all the accomplishments we made, and this is just a beginning. And we believe we can evolve this program further and make it more impactful and meaningful for the communities and other stakeholders involved. And with that, that's conclusion of my presentation. I will be happy to take questions and that's during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob and Adeel. Our next speaker is Beth White. She is currently the Senior Strategist for Industry and Public Engagement for the FAA's Air Traffic Organization. She is responsible for the coordination of a matrixed effort that develops standards for national and regional engagement efforts with the aviation stakeholders, as well as communication efforts with local communities. Prior to her move to the Air Traffic Organization, White was the Senior Advisor of Communications for the FAA. Her work has included the management of large sport events and facilities, including multiple World Cup and Olympic Games. Please help me welcome Beth White.
So thank you very much. Happy to be here. As you heard, I'm Beth White. Been with the FAA now for about 10 years, working with a lot of our next-gen communications and now working on a lot of our community engagement. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about this because I think it's an interesting piece of the puzzle here. You know, there's so many things that we look at with how the planes are flying, how things are operating, but this is a really important part about how we communicate, which quite often is a missing piece in all of this. So looking at, you know, what was kind of the challenge that we were looking at, and that was, you know, is the information about, is noise abatement information available to pilots somewhere they can easily find it? If you've seen some of these chart supplements and some of this information, and this is really something, it's pilot communication, it's very dense, it's really very complicated. Sometimes the information wasn't consistent, and we really wanted to work with airports and the pilot community to see if we could address that. And this has been something that's been going on now for about 2 years, kind of in the process. So the chart supplement that I'm going to show you again, which is a tool for the pilots, is really one of the primary reference materials for them. It provides them, hopefully, consistent information about the noise abatement information for an airport, making sure that it's captured correctly, making sure it's concise. If there's graphics or visuals that need to go with that to help them, that's also important. So making sure that all that is the best it can be. And it should be kind of a single reference point for pilots. And that's another reason for us to make sure that, you know, kind of take a look at it and say, ask the question, are we doing all that we can do to make sure that information is in there the way it can be? Some of the best practices for communicating it is the nomenclature correct, things like that. And then again, mentioning the graphic support, if there is something that is going to help pilots visually better understand what we're asking them to do, let's make sure that's available in there too. So as everyone knows too, this is something everybody's been working on for a long time, you know, with looking at noise at the source, with changing out engines, working with carriers on what they do. We know that there has been reduction at the noise of the source and even the footprint, but are there some other things we can do? That's the big picture. Are some of the other things we can do to maybe change that, right? So one of the things we did was kind of pull some folks together and ask some questions. And it became very clear early on that there was a lot of interest by the pilot community. When I say this, I mean more of the GA and the business jet community. The carriers have mechanisms for a lot of this where the cargo and passenger carriers may be made more aware through notices and things like that. But are these pilots aware? So we pulled together a group of folks and started asking questions, and it became very clear that they were very interested in doing it, but maybe it wasn't as easy to find. Maybe the way it was described, maybe where it even was in the particular document was not where they would look, the first place they might consider looking. So we then also spoke to some of the airports and said, talk to us about your noise abatement information. How are you getting it to us? How has it been historically somebody gone back and reviewed it to see if it's still current? Is it getting to the right place? And it turns out some yes and some not so much. So we took that on as an opportunity with our airports division and the folks that do our charting to really go back and kind of work through this process and kind of rethink it and how we could better pull this information forward. So the chart supplement itself, what it is a very data-rich document that has every public use airport in the National Airspace System. Pilots access it through their electronic planning software. It's updated every 56 days, and it's very pilot, as I mentioned before, it's for pilots. The language in here is in the nomenclature for the pilot. So they're going to see this document, they're going to look and see, you know, just what I just talked about. So I'm using an example of our friends who just presented earlier. So you can see all the information that Naples Airport has in there for pilots to understand the noise abatement. So that's a lot of information for them to see. This is where it is in the chart supplement. So it's a very small area to convey a lot of information. Now, there's information that I just talked about is on their website, right? So if somebody goes ahead and they do that extra work, that's great. But this is also what they're looking at with their electronic flight bag. So it's important to have that there. And when we're looking at that, we want to make sure that that part about each one of the airports is obviously as up to date as it can be. There's sometimes very complex, like we just saw, noise abatement information. Again, how do we translate that and make sure that we've got the right nomenclature? So looked at creating a common organizational structure, the things that they would be looking at, the first highlighted things they would be doing. Nighttime use avoidance, surface instructions, all of these things, our team put these together and kind of highlighted them as the ones that would help us develop the best, short, crisp message for those pilots. And then, of course, kind of using the common nomenclature that they're going to use as pilots so they can understand it. Just as an example, here's some that's there, talking about, you can see the legacy, the way it's put out there, the way it's the description versus the adjusted. Starts with the noise, starts with quiet hours, and I'm just going to put these in a slightly different format so you guys can see what we're talking about. So you've got a legacy of avoid an area on approach. The adjusted is telling them VFR runway 8, avoid houses 4 miles from runway threshold. Basically what we're saying there is avoid the houses 4 ways out from the end of the runway. So trying to create an up-leveled language to help them better understand in that short period of time and make sure that the best information that the airport is providing is up-leveled as well. Same thing here, okay? So our hope is that the outcome of this, and we're in the process now, it's pretty much been to the point of being developed and the systems are being put into place. We're going to be going out with a campaign to the airports to be able to up-level this information into, there's a system, a portal that they actually put it in. We hope it'll create greater pilot awareness and adherence to these procedures and reduce impacts on the communities, because those noise abatement procedures, as we saw with the Part 150 study and we heard with Naples, are developed with the airports and the communities in mind. So how do we think then, okay, we've got these, how do we make sure the information's there and the adherence is better? I think it provides better communication with us and airport operators, because we're thinking through, again, how that communication goes back and forth. And I think it fosters that collaboration. I mean, you're hearing these presentations today. This is no group, no organization, no federal entity is the one responsible for dealing with challenges around aviation noise. It has to be something that's dealt with from multiple stakeholders, and I think this is a great example of that. So I'm gonna beat everybody else's time and put you guys back on schedule.
Let's hear it for the FAA getting us out the gate on time. Thank you, Beth. Our next speaker is Matt Liknaitzky. He's the business manager and original founder of the Sling Aircraft U.S. Distributorship and the Sling Pilot Academy. He's been a pilot since 1995 with over 3,200 plus hours flight time. He's an aerobatic competitor and an FAA designated pilot examiner. Please welcome Matt.
Thank you all for having me. It's great to be here. This is a regional approach to addressing airplane noise and emissions concerns. Again, to introduce myself, Matt Liknaitzky, pilot for 30 years, commercial pilot, flight instructor, aerobatic competitor, designated pilot examiner. But the important parts are, I love aviation, and I love how aviation uplifts so many lives, and we do that on a daily basis in our pilot academy. And I wish that aviation could be risk-free, emissions-free, and silent. Some may say I'm a dreamer. We're going to talk about what we've learned about community citizenship as the fastest growing flight school in the region, and actually in the country, and our journey towards making our airplanes quieter, and then some of the conclusions we've reached in trying to create harmony between aviation and the surrounding communities. Our flight school started in about 13 years ago as a typical mom and pop flight school, just doing a little bit of flight training here and there. We're now, one of the largest in the region, and we are also the largest flight school in the country that primarily uses unleaded gasoline. And we also use quieter flight training airplanes. Our Slings are far quieter than the traditional flight training airplanes. And we've got several locations in Southern California, and we like to think that we're meeting the critical needs of the severe pilot shortage. This is a picture of our next generation trainer. It's not a typical flight training airplane. It's very modern, it's new. And one of the main reasons for its quietness is the Rotax 912 engine, which it was designed from the outset to burn unleaded gasoline. And it only burns 3.5 gallons of unleaded gasoline an hour. And of course, that's if the unleaded gasoline is available. So very low emissions, low consumption. Our airport at our primary location in the city of Torrance uses the CASPA system. And the CASPA system already shows that we only account for 8% of the noise complaints at the airport, even though we are more than 50% of the operations. So all good so far. So we've got quieter airplanes. We're using primarily unleaded gasoline. What could possibly go wrong? So into the pilot shortage and our growth. So as most of you know, Boeing's 20-year outlook is that we need to create 89 brand new pilots every single day worldwide. That's a lot of pilots that we need to create. And by the way, this number doesn't include the demand that's going to be created by the urban air mobility requirement for pilots. The federal government has responded to this severe shortage, and the FAA has workforce development grants. Our academy was a recipient of one of these $500,000 grants, the purpose of which is to create more pilots. So we're doing our federal duty to create as many pilots as we can. We got awards from the California State Legislature on our efforts in doing workforce generating activities. And so we have been growing at a rate of about 2 new airplanes every month. And we've got no shortage of students who want to take the leap into a professional pilot career. And we do more flights than just about any flight school in the region. And so on this journey of our expansion and meeting the demands of the pilot shortage, I think you guys all recognize this guy. This guy came onto the scene, and now for the first time, more people are at home than ever before during the week when most of the flight school flight operations are taking place. And so many people noticed airplane traffic around small municipal airports, like our airport, for the first time when COVID struck. Some people actually were surprised that there was an airport right next door to them they never noticed. So community concern and airplane noise complaints start happening. The communities around the airports that we operate out of became aggravated. A small percentage, but there's an aggravation about airport noise around the airports, and they approach city council and demand action against airplane noise. And our city council, they start a working group which brought aircraft operators, pilots, and residents together to try to understand and workshop the problem. That was a great move, and this produced great results. This working group actually came up with voluntary noise abatement procedures to address the largest pain point around our particular airport, which was the rising terrain to the south of the airport. And so over a year ago, we adopted voluntary noise mitigation procedures, which basically had us giving up half of the operations available at our airport. So the pattern to the north of the airport, we continue to use, and we gave up 50% of our operations. And we did this because we listened to the community and we heard what the pain points really were, and we addressed the most significant one, which was the rising terrain to the south of the airport. So that effort of collaboration and that workshopping worked. The city then, in our case, started to pursue a voluntary letter of agreement between the flight schools, airplane operators, and the city. and the FAA. And one of the points the city pushed, this is, we're going back almost a year now. One of the points the city pushed in the draft LOA was an agreement to utilize other airports when possible, when doing flight training. So this is the wording that was in the voluntary agreement that they proposed. Flight schools will utilize other airports when possible, sending aircraft in scheduled groups for training. So they're telling us, go somewhere else, make a noise there, and then come back when you're done. So problem solved. I'm a pilot, so I like checklists. We got quiet airplanes, check. We got unleaded gasoline, check. Voluntary noise abatement procedures, check. And we're going to export as much of our noise to other airports as possible, check. Problem solved? No, definitely not. So the residents are still not satisfied with airplane noise, and not all pilots are aware of the voluntary procedures that we've adopted and are trying to spread. And most airports across the region are experiencing similar increases in flight traffic. So we, around this time, start to participate in noise abatement meetings at our nearby Long Beach Airport, which is very nearby, and we hear their concerns. And during these meetings, we learn that many of the offenders at Long Beach are from Torrance, our airport, and we already know that many of the offenders at Torrance are from Long Beach. So we start to and another thing we start to recognize is that although our airplanes are the quietest airplanes at the airport in objective decibels, they still create an annoyance to some people. And some people even say our airplanes are more annoying than the louder airplanes that have a lower pitch tone. So we come to a number of conclusions. Conclusion number one, this issue is regional. We need to approach it regionally. It is absolutely clear we cannot solve this issue airport by airport. We cannot just export our noise to each other. And we need to educate all pilots about all airports in the region. There's a lot of airports trying to educate their pilots about their noise abatement concerns, and then they immediately go flying around the neighborhood and don't understand any of the noise concerns of any of the other airports. And of course, all day long, we have airplanes from other airports who don't understand our noise concerns coming and using our airport. So that's what airplanes do. They fly from here to there. So we need to educate all pilots about all airports that they may operate in. And then also we need to educate residents about the importance of general aviation and flight training to our civilization. And I use that word civilization markedly because aviation and our civilization have a lot to do with each other. Conclusion number two, listen to the community. We are beyond arguing that you moved near an airport, what did you expect? Which is what a lot of pilots tell us to say when we face with people that complain about noise. And talking to the community can help and identify real pain points. If the discussion is let's just remove the airport from the face of the earth, then it's not an easy one to have. But if we can really identify the pain points, we can actually act on them. And developing voluntary fly-friendly procedures in excess of the existing procedures can help alleviate some of the pressure. A lot of people say, we're already following the procedure, but it's not good enough. And then we learned that when pilots and aircraft operators ignore and dismiss resident complaints, the residents then take that to city council, and they're normally carrying pitchforks. So, but this communication is a two-way street, and it goes hand in hand with education. For example, at our airport, a lot of the residents thought that a lot of what we were doing was plain illegal, and they were just enraged that no one was doing anything to stop us. But with the conversation came education in both directions, and now they understand that we're actually allowed to fly circles around the airport, and it's called flight training, touch and goes. So, helping let the residents understand that what they're experiencing is not a barrage of illegal activity that's being subjected on them is very helpful to people feeling a bit better. Conclusion number three, pilot education. We realized just what the previous speaker, Beth, mentioned, that it's very difficult for pilots who are going to fly around a region and do a few landings at a few airports in the region to get out Google and start searching for noise abatement procedures for each airport. It's time consuming, it's hard to find the right documents. So we spearheaded with a group of founding members a website called Fly Friendly SoCal, where if you live in the SoCal region, you can go to this website, see a Google map of all the airports. With one click, you can click on an airport, and you can go to the noise abatement procedures for that airport. It's just the beginning, and we are building it out so that you'll actually have like you can see in this diagram, the recommended traffic patterns superimposed on the map, so even dumb pilots can understand it. So we also invite all airplane operators to join this group and to make the fly-friendly pledge, which is not, I shall just obey my own noise abatement procedures. It is, I shall learn about the noise abatement and fly-friendly procedures at all the airports I operate at, and I shall teach all pilots that come to my airport about ours. So it's regional. Conclusion number 4, resident education. If we look at flight training and airplane operations, it's cyclical. It responds to needs and demands. And you know, this is a few airports in the Southern California region. They've been in steady decline in terms of operations for 20, 30 years. But in the last 5 years, we've had an uptick. And so some of the people who have just become aware of general aviation think that it's an hellacious uptick, but it's just a small little blip right now. So just looking at the big picture is kind of important. And then also on this conclusion of resident education, letting people know that flight training is critical and essential. And in previous times when I've said, hey, flight training is critical and essential, I've had laughs from the audience. But if you look at Kaiser has identified flight training as part of our critical infrastructure. Without flight training, there would be no air transportation, no air freight, no next day delivery, no medical evacuation, and no organ delivery. So if we all good without all of that stuff, then let's ban flight training. But without flight training, we don't create any new pilots, and without flight training, every existing pilot loses their privileges in a matter of months. So flight training is necessary for pilot creation and for maintaining the currency of existing pilots. And then in terms of this resident education, when city staff responds to resident complaints with factual information, it's very useful. Conclusion number 5, acoustic research and development. So we realized that we needed to work on the acoustic sound characteristics of our airplane and not just keep defending our airplane as the quietest airplane in the skies. And so we started a project to try to engineer the sound to be more pleasing to the human ear. And we started to go with the subjective notion that a low-pitched hum is soothing, higher-pitched sounds and oscillating sounds are irritating, like a mosquito is an irritating sound, but a low hum, like Barry White singing to you, is pretty soothing. So we've made a bunch of modifications. We are lucky that our modifications don't require FAA certification, which gives us an advantage which most flight schools don't have. This is the new Whisper model of our airplane. In our R&D, we focused on 3 areas of improvement: engine exhaust noise, engine compartment noise. The compartment that the engine is in is like an acoustic resonator, like a guitar, and then propeller noise. On the engine exhaust noise side, we added what's called a Swiss muffler. It's like a 6-foot-long silencer that is slung under the airplane. Ugly as hell, and a lot of pilots don't like the look of it, but it works very, very well. And it has a kick-up at the rear so that all residual sound is directed upwards, away from the communities below. It's extremely effective. On our engine compartment, we lined the inside of the engine compartment with a very expensive acoustic damping foam. And that, again, made a huge difference in damping the noise that was emitted from our engine compartment. And then with propellers, there's a lot of technology that goes into making propellers quieter, and luckily a lot of the eVTOL manufacturers are working on this kind of technology. 2-bladed, 3-bladed, 4-bladed propellers make a different pitch tone. The 2-blade is a deeper pitch. So we tested some of those, and the lower pitch tones are more soothing to the ear, but they pack more of a punch. And they can travel through the walls of buildings more easily. So when we tested 2-bladers, we liked the sound, but it had a little bit more of a decibel punch to it. So we tried 4-bladers. It had a higher pitch tone, which was more annoying. And so we settled on a 3-blader. And after testing 8 models, we came up with the quietest, smoothest, most soothing sound. And we are developing a custom propeller that has something called non-planar blades, which is going to be even better. The results of our noise tests, we did some tests at Santa Monica and Long Beach airports just last week, and we got the results back. DNR, did not register. So it really works. We had a 50% decrease in the sound level, and the tone is much more pleasing to the ear. They still do make a noise, I hate to say. And then we debuted the airplane. We were very grateful to have been invited, thank you, Jared, to the California State Capitol. This was just last week to show our efforts in making aviation more community compatible. And we were happy to display our airplane in front of the California Capitol building. Conclusion, there's still much to be done. The efforts to fly friendly remain ongoing. Education of pilots is ongoing and has a long way to go. Many operators are head down and working and don't have the capacity to engage. Most flight schools don't have a person that they could afford to let come to a symposium like this. They're all working, and the boss of the flight school is in an airplane right now teaching a student. So they have limited ability to engage. Education of residents is ongoing, and there's still a lot of misinformation going around. Just look on Nextdoor app. And modifications to make airplanes quieter are expensive and require certification in most cases, and that's very tricky. This is just our story. We have an advantage of ASTM certified airplanes. And then of course the solution for unleaded aviation fuel for all flight training airplanes remains out of reach for everyone for now, but we know it's just around the corner, so we're getting there. So that is the conclusion of my presentation, and I look forward to questions a little later.
Matt, I understand there's no dumb pilot, so be careful. Thank you, Matt. Our next speaker is Tami Mulcahy. Tami is a community advocate and member of Sky Posse Los Altos since the 2015 implementation of NextGen in the Northern California Metroplex. She presented to the Select Committee on South Bay Arrivals on behalf of the Quiet Skies Mid-Peninsula, a coalition of 13 advocacy groups from across 3 counties. Welcome, Tami.
I love all the music quotes there. That was great. Darlene, thank you. And first of all, I want to say thank you to Darlene Yaplee and Marie Jo Fremont, wherever you are out there, who were co-authors on this presentation. Where are we? Oh, we're not even up yet. Oh, we are. Okay, sorry, couldn't quite see there. This presentation is based on the research on 7 airport interviews, both commercial and general aviation. And we are very grateful to these airports for their generous time, and ESA, HMMH, and NBAA. And although Dallas-Fort Worth does not have a formal Fly Quiet program, their interview was informative. So let's start with context. All FQPs are voluntary because of ANES, which stipulates that airports or local or state governments cannot impose new restrictions on either noise or operations unless agreed to by the FAA. Using Airport Improvement Program funds also prevents airports from pursuing restrictions because of grant assurances. And all pre-ANES grandfathered ordinances can be enforced but cannot be changed. Now, multiple questions are being raised about restrictions. For example, do ANES and curfews apply to pistons, turboprops, and helicopters? Do curfews for touch and go operations and local operations affect interstate commerce? And does intrastate traffic interfere with interstate commerce? In short, programs are all voluntary and vary depending on factors such as, is there a pre-ANES ordinance? Is it commercial or GA airport? And what resources does that airport have? So let's look at similarities and differences, and you've heard some of those today. First, programs are typically designed in collaborations with airlines, however, with limited or no collaboration with affected communities. Most Fly Quiet programs have multiple elements to measure airlines or pilots using scoring system and then give awards for recognition. The scores or winners are published online. The program elements are typically measured close to the airport, within 5 miles at most, and primarily relate to departures. And finally, there is no evaluation of whether FQPs reduce noise over time, so noise reduction results are unclear. As for differences, some programs had elements exclusively under control of airlines and pilots, others including elements controlled by ATCs like preferred runways. Some programs included a subset of FAA noise abatement procedures. Nighttime hours are not standardized to the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. hours for the DNL penalty. Scoring methods vary widely. Programs use different weights and number of elements. Some normalize scores to the number of operations, and some have bonus points. Awards also vary in terms of number of awards, types, and frequency. So now let's look at best practices that could be used for both commercial and GA programs, and they are applicable regardless of airport differences. Seattle recognizes award winners with banners at main terminals and also gives the winning airline the opportunity to display a personal Fly Quiet banner in their ticketing area. This provides recognition visibility to both passengers and to other airlines. The John Wayne scoring report for GA is a good example of distilling Fly Quiet data into an accessible format. This information includes the number of operations, aircraft type, scores for each element, including bonus points for sustainability and most engaging, and the total score. Heathrow evaluates the top 50 airlines with minimum performance targets. Each airline starts with a perfect score of 1,000, and then points are deducted based on results. British Airways short haul had 889 points for its total performance, and in addition for each element. The position number shows the airline rank within an element. The green, amber, red rating shows if the airline exceeded, met, or failed the minimum performance target for that element. Airports should have minimum performance requirements and not grade on a curve. Note that Heathrow goes beyond noise. It has 2 elements on emissions. Naples, who you've already heard from today, or this afternoon, Naples evaluates participants in 3 groups: jets, pistons, and turboprops using 2 different scorecards. All get a total score, which is the sum of the scores for the metrics in the scorecard. The total score determines the final grade using an A through F scale, and Naples recognizes everyone with an A. Recognizing everyone who met target goals can be a positive motivator. Every month, Naples contacts pilots about curfew violations and noise issues through phone calls, letters, and meetings to identify reasons for the violations. This is documented in a monthly noise report. For example, the report shows the curfew violators, which company, number of curfew violations, tail numbers, contact information, and reason. This level of transparency helps with voluntary compliance. In addition, that report shows the airport commitment to their FQP by listing actions taken. For example, in November, 100% of curfew violators were contacted with a letter. Staff spoke with 67% of curfew violators. Staff also spoke with over 200 flight schools, training centers fiscal year to date. The LAX program has a flexible bonus element to reward carriers who take measures to reduce noise or engage with stakeholders. Flexible means that actions can be customized. They can be unique to a carrier or apply to multiple carriers. Examples include a carrier proposing to educate their pilots on noise abatement measures or actively participating in a roundtable. Teterboro provides a flight crew handbook and a mobile application to give pilots information on noise abatement rules and regulations. And it includes descriptions of noise abatement procedures. The Good Neighbor Award has a performance bar, again, not graded on a curve. and is given to operators without any noise or voluntary curfew violations. Teterboro uses a mailing list to communicate with pilots and meets with operators and pilots frequently. Now, here are some examples of quieter outcomes. Seattle collaborated with EVA Air to change their late night flight to a quieter Boeing 787-10 instead of using Boeing 777 or 747. FedEx switched from an MD-11 to a Boeing 767. Oops, how do I go back? Go back. At SFO, Cathay Pacific was always beaten by Singapore Airlines on the scoring because of the engines they used. Cathay Pacific decided to keep the same aircraft, but use the ones with the quieter Pratt & Whitney engines on the SFO route. And NetJets, the largest consumer of fuel sales at Naples, has been the biggest curfew violator 2 to 3 times. Yet NetJets has now agreed to adhere to the voluntary night curfew. These positive outcomes were influenced by a range of efforts from relationships, ongoing dialogues to letters. FQPs raise awareness about noise impacts and encourage community-mindful behaviors, regardless of ANCA restrictions. Now, several airports have direct contact and follow-up with ATC on non-compliance on FAA noise abatement procedures. Yet one airport mentioned they only follow up if the non-compliance rate is unusual. Informing and following up with ATC is a good practice, but not a best practice. Ideally, airports should inform ATC on all non-compliance of FAA noise abatement procedures to allow ATC to investigate and take corrective action. And then ATC should get back to airports on their findings and any actions taken. This airport ATC reporting needs to be programmatic and not based on individual relationships as it is today. We recognize that not all FAA NAPs are part of an airport FQP because the program is targeted at what airlines and pilots control, not at what ATC controls. However, compliance with all NAPs should be monitored and enforced, and the FAA should lead this effort. Now, this chart summarizes the best practices for the airports we researched. It's quite detailed, but we include it here as a resource for you later, so we can move on. So given that airports are limited in what they can do to reduce noise, they cannot set curfew, determine which flight procedures to use, or limit night flights. Airports can implement voluntary programs, and these programs can still have robust expectations and be results-oriented. We know airports are different, and yet here are recommendations for a community-oriented FQP, and these are built upon existing best practices and can be universally applied. 1, replace curve ranking with a minimum performance bar. The bar is too low. There are winners today, even if there is no improvement year over year, because participants are graded on a curve. And like Heathrow, airports should rank airlines and operators based on minimum performance targets. Drive improvement with quantifiable objectives per year and a means to achieve them. For example, develop 2 to 3 annual objectives, and one could be to increase compliance of an element by 5% versus the previous year. An action could be to discuss with top violators on how to increase compliance and get their commitment to change. 3, balance arrivals and departures. Most programs underrepresent arrivals, especially far away from the airport. The FQP should be balanced between departures and arrivals and include elements that characterize or capture airframe noise far away from the airport when pilots fly dirty on next-gen arrivals, thus creating substantial noise. For example, quiet fleet, which is a departure element based on engine certification, should be balanced by an airframe noise element for arrivals. Similar to departure exceedances, capture arrival exceedances 10 to 20 miles away. 4, create a scorecard by airline tail number and follow-up actions taken. You get what you measure. For the total score and for each element, show historical trends, grading relative to minimum performance targets and ranking relative to peers. Separate airline pilot-controlled and FAA ATC-controlled elements. 5, strengthen award categories to reflect noise reduction. Awards should only be given to participants who meet minimum performance targets. The most outstanding award for sustained performance over 5 years, overall and for each element. And for yearly awards, you could have a best overall based on overall score, most improved overall and for each element, and best in class for each element. Number 6, include affected communities as equal stakeholders and reflect community impacts. Communicating the final program to a community is not collaboration. Elements and criteria need to reflect community impacts. 7, add emissions in the program elements. Commercial airports could use Heathrow's emission metrics, for example, and GA airports could use leaded fuel and unleaded fuel sales, or if operations are mostly jets, they should use commercial emission metrics. And 8, standardize key parts of FQPs, use DNL night time hours, balance a quiet fleet element with an equivalent for airframe noise, normalize raw scores to number of operations as applicable, and systematically report compliance and follow-up actions. So I want to follow up with an important question. Does your Fly Quiet program adequately address community impacts? For example, nighttime noise is a serious problem. NextGen created an arrivals problem. Are these adequately captured today? Airports can't limit operations, however, airports can have full discretion to implement a robust, community-oriented, and voluntary Fly Quiet program. And given the Fly Quiet goal is to reduce noise exposure, we created this checklist to support airports, roundtables, and community in reviewing current programs. Airports aren't starting from scratch. The current structure of tracking, reporting, giving awards, and current best practices can be leveraged to deliver a Fly Quiet program that adequately addresses community impacts. Thank you.
Okay, we're all going to move to the Q&A portion. I just found a best practice that we need to put on the slide. Zach gave me a pair of Fly Quiet socks. So which, I'm going to add that to the list, Zach.
Absolutely.
The first question is to Adeel. Oops. First question is to Adeel. Did you expect reductions in noise levels or DNLs when you set up the Fly Quiet program? If so, can you quantify those reductions?
Thanks for that question. So this is the new program we just rolled out, and everything's based on the certification noise of the aircraft. So we don't measure noise for this program, but that's something we can monitor over the years. I mean, basically, we hope to see improvement in the stage of aircraft, getting better and better, stage 5 and beyond. So hopefully, that will make a long-term impact for the communities for the noise.
Question is to Matt. Do you pay attention to concentration of aircraft when thinking of noise abatement?
Yes. What we've done is we have staggered our schedule so that half of our fleet is offset from the other half of the fleet by about 30 minutes, and that is an attempt to alleviate that problem.
Question, this might be to Beth, but other people, if you have an answer, what steps are being taken to make Part 150 recommendations mandatory, not just a voluntary request to users of an airport?
It's voluntary. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, thank you, it's a voluntary program. Okay, thank you for commenting. Why does the FAA not publish the noise abatement procedures for each airport that's to be made publicly or to the roundtables?
It's made publicly to the roundtable?
Yeah, right now, what you presented, I think, is just to the airlines and the pilots, but we understand that those
Well,
procedures are not made available publicly.
Well, they are usually by the airport. That's the airport website is where all that information is found. That's what we were doing going from the Naples, site there, just on that example. And then what we're talking about is the pilot's information. So I would certainly be happy to have a conversation with folks to find out about how roundtables we can work with the airport to make sure the roundtable knows more about that and what those procedures are. And sometimes they're procedures, sometimes they're runway usage, that type of thing. That's why we say noise abatement information, because it's not always a procedure. But I'm sure there's ways that we can work with those roundtables to make sure that information is provided to roundtables so they're more aware of it.
That would be great, Beth. I know it's probably not uniformly applied, so we'll talk to you offline, but there's some roundtables that can't get the data, so.
That's a great follow-up.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Matt, why aren't your aircraft subject to FAA type and certification?
Our aircraft are light sport aircraft, which was an FAA development in about 2004, which allowed for ASTM consensus standard self-certification of aircraft. And it's a program that kind of avoids certification, but has a similar standard of testing that is required, but it's just, it's manufacturer certified. And it actually has been incredibly successful to a point where the FAA is expanding the program coming in the next year or so through a program called Mosaic, the modernization of special airworthiness certificates. And it's going to allow for more aircraft to be certified in this category, which allows for innovation and development and is kind of a sea change in the way the FAA certifies aircraft, which traditionally has been kind of restrictive in terms of innovation. But now the floodgates, so to speak, have opened, and now it's anything that can be tested and designed to a consensus standard and accepted by the FAA can be produced, and it shows an equivalent, reasonably high level of safety. And so the expansion of the special airworthiness certificates is going to allow for more airplanes like the Sling to be used in flight training.
Zach, could you comment a little bit about how you came up with the cost-neutral program and what the response has been?
For the UL-94?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we knew we wanted to make that commitment to the community to make it available. And so, we reached out to Swift, who's one of our fuel providers that provides the UL-94, just to find out how much it was going to cost. And then, we went to our board and said, hey, we can offer this and we can throw it out there at $11 or $12 a gallon. We know nobody's going to do it, but we can make a good show out of it. Hey, we make it available. It's there. People can choose it if they want, but we know no one would ever buy it. I mean, maybe once in a blue moon. But we said if we want to really make it, truly effective, we're going to have to make it, at or below the cost of avgas. It's just the only way that anyone's ever going to use it. And our board was pretty wholeheartedly behind it. There were some questions, some thoughts about whether or not we should do it. We have some people who are very free market, and then they're thinking, and why should we be subsidizing these things? If people want it, they'll pay for it. But ultimately, the board decided that it was worth making that commitment, even though it was going to be a money loser for us to do that, and then to go beyond that to even offer the incentive for the STCs and the inspections, because we wanted to make sure that there was no possible financial hurdle. If you want to fly and you have any, and your aircraft is capable, and you have any desire to use it, there's not going to be a financial reason why you can't. You may choose not to, and that's your decision for whatever reason that is, but it's not going to be because you can't afford it or it's too expensive.
This question is for Beth and Matt. Are there plans for chartered noise abatement procedures in areas used by flight schools for maneuvers away from the airport?
I'm gonna let Matt start.
Okay.
I don't know.
They're part of any flight school's kind of noise abatement procedures are to go to what's called a practice area. And practice areas are sometimes defined on FAA sectional charts, and they are normally areas that are away from congested communities. And for example, in the LA area, a lot of the practice areas are over the ocean. So it is kind of a normal procedure for flight schools these days to go practice their upper air work away from communities. Of course, a lot of learning to fly includes learning how to land, and that has to be done in the airport environment normally.
Is that important?
Sometimes.
Hopefully.
I would say just as an example, right, we do the same thing. We've talked with our 2 flight schools that are based at our airport. When they're not doing their touch and goes, they go out over the Gulf or out over the Everglades, where they're not bothering people. And obviously, if something were to happen, they're not likely to endanger anyone else on the ground as well, too. And they're happy to do that. They understand. So it's not been an issue with that. Again, they do have to do that pattern training when they're doing those touch and goes, and that's where most of the complaints do come from. But they're not just out there flying circles for fun over people's houses.
Yeah, and I would also add, sometimes we get people telling us on Nextdoor again, why don't you go do your flight training out in the Mojave Desert? There's no one out there. There's just tumbleweed. And what they don't recognize is flight schools in a large part are local businesses. Flight schools serve the local communities that they're in. Like the majority of our students, drive into our flight school every day, and they didn't have to move their residence to take up flight training. So we're serving the local community, and then there is a portion of students that always come in from another location to take advantage of the flight training that's offered. And those people choose the flight school for its quality, reputation, or whatnot, but they also choose the flight school because of its location. They want to come to Los Angeles because they've decided to spend 3 years of their life becoming a commercial pilot and flight instructor. And they're going to spend 3 years of their life in some place. And normally, no offense to anyone who lives in Mojave Desert, normally they don't want to move to the Mojave Desert for 3 years.
I also think what's important is what you just heard is that they're using space that they then have available. If that space over the water happens to be available, then it's utilized. Not every place has a body of water next to it. I mean, you're talking about Florida and Southern California here. And then in Los Angeles, what most people don't see is off the coast in Los Angeles is a huge amount of restricted special use military airspace. So just because you see the empty area over the water doesn't mean that's available for use too. So
Tami, the question is, did any of the airports that you research look at complaints as part of a percentage or in any of their awards?
No,
Yeah, no.
that did not come out
Yes.
at all.
Question to Adeel. Should representatives from Airport Roundtable be included in the Fly Quiet program workshops?
So for the Part 150 studies, when we did them, we went through a very robust public engagement, with the public. So we got a lot of recommendations and suggestions from public. So that was the one piece, we did public hearings and public workshops. So for the Fly Quiet, we just wanted to focus on the technical groups, FAA, different lines of businesses and the airlines. So that was the first part of the, developing the Fly Quiet program. So now since the reports are out in the public, so public's input, comments are welcome. And that's something we can explore in the future, but right now that's the makeup of the focus group.
How does the FAA make controllers aware of noise abatement procedures? The challenge is not just pilots.
I guess that's me. So the noise abatement procedures are part of the local controller training, being aware of those. Again, that conversation that goes back and forth that you heard earlier between the airport and their local facilities, It's part of a regular training schedule that comes up that those controllers are made aware of those noise abatement procedures.
And I would say, I think airports do that too. I mean, I know we have regular conversations with our tower manager, with our controllers about the procedures, things we'd like them to do, if possible. Every month, we send them a letter, so right off the end of our primary runway is a big park, and they do lots of events there every month, outside art shows and this and that, all kinds of, I mean, probably 15, 20 things every month that happen there, opera in the park, other things like that. And we send them a list every month, and we say, if possible, during these times, can you please switch to the other runway? If the conditions are okay and the traffic and everything, can you please switch to the cross-run runway? And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and I'm sure there's reasons for the times that they don't. But I think airports do, at least ours, and I'm sure many others, you know, we do work with our controllers too to get as good a buy-in from them, because they are as critical a part as the pilots or the airports or anyone else.
And I'll add on to that. I think that from my perspective of where I sit from a more of a headquarters role and seeing things happen, the places that we are the most successful is where there is that very solid relationship between the airport and that air traffic manager, that they're having those regular conversations. So it's great that it's coming from us, but it's the back and forth there of what's going on from a daily events, what are the things they're hearing, bringing those conversations together and making sure that they're working as a team.
I'd also add to what Beth said. I've been experienced a city where the city council and the air traffic control were in, not in good communication, and the demands that the city was making of the ATC were beyond reasonable, and that has the effect of the situation falling apart and is not productive. So I do see an opening for like earlier facilitation of that relationship. Of course, when the demands are unreasonable, like some of our city council have requested, if the control tower can just turn away airplanes that come to the airport that are from other airports, it becomes really difficult then to kind of move forward with any kind of collaboration.
So it could go to anyone or several people, but can technology be embraced for noise abatement, possibly using simulators for some of the trainings, such as touch and goes?
Yeah, there's been some really exciting developments in like augmented reality simulation and very realistic simulators. Right now, for $20-30 million, you can buy a very realistic simulator that can teach you how to fly the airplane from zero to takeoff and landing and total operation. But the simulators that are used in flight training today in most flight schools, it can teach you procedures, but they could never replace the actual practice of learning to fly in an actual airplane. But some of the new technologies that are coming out now, there's a company called Loft Dynamics that makes a helicopter simulator that's extremely realistic, that you could actually learn how to take off and land a helicopter without ever sitting in a helicopter. And the simulator doesn't cost $20 or $30 million.
Anybody else want to comment? Okay. Tami, obviously you interviewed 7 different airports. What was the surprise to you? I mean, this was new to look at the Fly Quiet programs. What was interesting for you that you discovered for the first time, or was an issue, what have you?
What comes to me right off the bat is I thought it was really refreshing to hear a lot of people's commitment to it. They are voluntary, and a lot of people really just wanted to do what was right by their communities. I think that's what took me by surprise. A lot of the things that I talked about were the checklist of that could be done. And that was good to hear too. There's a lot of similarities. A lot of people are finding the same things. And so I think that was part of the goal today, was to just try to pull those all together into a uniform package to present them, because some of you out there might have this piece, but not that piece. And so just pulling them all together makes for a little hope that things will get better for people who are affected.
I think there's also sometimes a misperception that the people who are operating or part of an operation at an airport don't live there. all of our air traffic controllers live in those communities as well. All of the people who work at the airport, Matt's talking about the students are at his school. They're living there as well. You know, our air traffic controllers always talk about that. Of course, I care. I live here too. My kids are at that park. I want to be part of a solution. I think it's about us also sometimes looking at that and thinking about, you know, start with positive intent, that there is a willingness to do that, right? And that conversation is so important to come at it from that perspective.
Beth, I'll read the question, but it's got some language I don't understand. Is there an alert on the sectional or terminal charts indicating to pilots that an airport has a chart supplement?
You've gone right out of my technical range there. I think what they're asking is, and maybe Matt, you could answer this, because I know that some of this went back to when we were looking at where to update the information. Certain places were a lot more complicated and confusing, and putting it there made more sense, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, the chart supplement, some airports have a full page devoted to it, and some airports have a teeny little line, and some airports have noise information and some don't. Everyone knows they can find out more information, and sadly, as it pertains to like fly quietly or noise abatement procedures, you have to do Googling to find like the real source of the information. The chart supplement doesn't have enough information. If you Google a city's website, you can find a nice diagram that shows a suggested traffic pattern, but you're not going to find that without Googling and clicking on a bunch of links. And that's what we've tried to solve that problem, at least in our region, with a fly-friendly SoCal, and try to make a one-stop place where you can find all that information.
I think websites like WhisperTrack too also help. It's a good repository of, you know, a wide range of airports and especially the noise-related issues that they have. And I think most airports do a pretty good job of keeping it updated. Not always, but if you just don't have time to do all the Googling, maybe that's one place to start.
Okay, what do you address FAA when noise issue is created by ATC, like initial headings off a commercial airport?
I'm not sure I totally understand the question.
I'm reading the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the.
Is the audience questioner want to comment further? Yes. I can answer it. Oh, okay. He wasn't.
I used to work at San Francisco Airport as a controller there. Those procedures are put in place, you know, reluctantly say by the FAA as departure procedures, and the air traffic controllers don't have the ability to change it. Like, one of our departures off San Francisco goes down to the south towards LA, the other one goes north towards Seattle, the other one goes to the east towards Chicago that way. If they're going to those destinations, that's the departure procedure that they have to use. And they only can go on those three.
They don't have the choice. Okay. Okay, this will be our last question, and then we'll have a break, and the speakers will be available. Matt, do you do your R&D in-house or contracted outside?
We've had several contractors that we've worked with. We ran the project in-house. And we've used propeller specialists, and we've had the help of some acoustic specialists, and we've basically spoken to people in the industry. But we've recognized that our efforts kind of converge with the efforts that are taking place in the eVTOL world, because they're attempting to bring aviation closer into the communities than airports. And so sound quality, it's a journey that we had to go on internally as a company, subjectively, to start to really ask ourselves the question, like, what annoys me, what annoys you, and kind of identify it, because as it is now, the metric of just straight decibels doesn't answer the question that we were trying to solve, because when it came to straight objective decibels, the battle's already won for us. So why is anyone still complaining? And the reason is because we fly a lot, and some people think the sound is annoying, and we fly all day long. And so we recognized the effort goes beyond just winning on straight decibels. We can do more, and in our case, it costs several $100,000, but it's well worth it for us if we can be less annoying.
Okay, a special thank you to our knowledgeable panelists, engaged audience, and our co-chairs, Tara, Cindy, and Justin. We will now take a break, and thank you, Adeel and Yousuf, on the remote.